In 1907, a wealthy aristocrat named Henry Child moved from Royal Leamington Spa, England, to a grand estate in Virginia with his two young children, Marianne, aged 11, and Jonathan, aged 9. In the beginning, life seemed perfect. The vast mansion served as a playground for the children, allowing them to explore every nook and cranny of their new home. However, this idyllic existence took a dark turn when one day the door to the south corridor was suddenly closed and locked. Curious about the restriction, Marianne asked her father why the door was locked. His terse response was chilling. "Just stay away from there, is that understood?" The atmosphere shifted, and soon the family's lives would spiral into chaos and madness. Years later, in the winter of 1968, an adult Marianne would recount these harrowing events to her children, confessing that what she was about to share was hard to believe and that she was the last person alive who held the truth. She asked for their forgiveness in advance for any inaccuracies in her timeline. After all, so much had happened. Marianne had lost her mother when she was just 6 years old. Her father, consumed by grief, descended into deep despair, often telling them that avoiding life as an orphan was the only thing keeping him alive. Out of the blue, Henry left his children in the care of a nanny and vanished for 2 years, returning with plans to move to Virginia. When Marianne inquired about why they were leaving, he simply looked away. The day they departed from England was dismal, characterized by rain and sadness as Marianne left behind her friends and the memories tied to her mother. However, as they arrived in Virginia, the estate felt like a new world to them, a giant playground filled with possibilities. The first year was filled with exploration and innocence, until that fateful day when the South Corridor door became a point of fixation. One evening, while playing with Jonathan, they discovered the locked door. Marianne found it odd, as their father usually left doors open unless he was inside. At dinner, she asked about the door again and was met with an unexpected outburst. "Just stay away from there, is that understood?" From that moment on, both children would stand before the door, their imaginations igniting with fear and curiosity. A month later, one night, Marianne awoke to her father walking down the hallway. Thinking it was a simple visit, she slipped out of bed and quietly trailed him. Success. She followed him to the south corridor, suspecting he was going behind the locked door. When she put her ear against it, she heard a strange man's voice say, "Tu propter paris ad mortem," which she recognized as Latin for, "You are hastening to death." This phrase sent a chill down her spine. Terrified, she returned to bed, unable to sleep. The next morning was unsettling. Her father was absent from breakfast, and the nanny, Edith, appeared troubled. When Edith briefly smiled at her, Marianne felt something was very wrong. Days passed with strange occurrences. Henry would often emerge from his room, yelling at the children to be quiet before retreating again. Unbeknownst to them, he was slipping deeper into a dark abyss, aided by Edith, who would occasionally slide notes under his door. One fateful afternoon, an urgent call from Jonathan led Marianne to Edith's room, where she discovered the nanny kneeling and bleeding, muttering frantic prayers. In horror, she called for her father, but when he rushed in, it was clear he was not the same. After a brief confrontation with Jonathan, he stormed into the room, leaving Marianne alarmed and desperate. The following days descended into a disturbing routine of fear and concern. Marianne felt the urgency to protect her brother, convinced something sinister lurked in the shadows. One day, while playing hide-and-seek, she saw her father dangerously perched on the roof. In a panic, she ran to find Edith to get help, but found her in a trance, seemingly disconnected from reality. Determined, Marianne climbed to the attic, where she found the window open. As she stepped onto the roof, she searched for her father but could not find him. Troubled, she retreated downstairs and found Jonathan playing dangerously close to the forbidden horse stable. After scolding him and retreating to the house, dread filled her as the oppressive silence of the estate enveloped them. On the third day of absence from both her father and Edith, Marianne managed breakfast and played with Jonathan, awaiting signs of them. The doors were wide open, leading her to believe they must be in the south corridor. However, the reality was far more horrifying than she could have imagined. That night, a familiar sound awoke her. A figure moving down the hallway. As she crept closer to the south corridor, she summoned the courage to open the door slowly. What she witnessed changed her life forever. Inside, her father stood beside a bald man clad in a black robe, holding a book. On the floor lay two bodies, one of Edith, gruesomely mutilated, and the other was her long-lost mother. In sheer terror, Marianne turned to flee, too terrified to contemplate the scene behind her. But the bald man lunged forward. Her heart raced as she sprinted back to her room, grabbing Jonathan and commanding him to leave immediately. They ran, pounding on the nearest neighbor's door, their cries for help echoing into the night. When the police finally arrived, they found Edith's body but never discovered Henry or the mysterious man. The investigation revealed a more heinous truth. In the barn, the police discovered the bodies of 6 women, each crucified and mutilated. In the aftermath, Marianne and Jonathan were taken in by their neighbors, the last remnants of a family that had once seemed so alive and full of promise. The estate was sold and the barn destroyed, but the memories of that night haunted Marianne for the rest of her life. To hear more chilling tales of horror, don't forget to subscribe.